All right. Well, I am happy and excited to bring a special guest aboard today and to have a conversation with Christian Holmes. I looked down as if I didn't know your name. That was weird. I don't know. I didn't mean to do that.
It's okay. It's okay.
No, I've known you for a little while now, so it's great. But
Yes.
Christian is a pre-licensed marriage family therapist, has gotten all of his education out of the way, and you're working basically on your hours so that you can be,
Yeah.
a full, a real boy, a full-fledged
Yes.
counselor.
Yes.
Yes. But
Yes.
but you've had a life before this. So Christian, maybe before we launch into our topic today, which is to sort of kind of discuss a little bit about teens and young adults and kind of the world that we find ourselves in today. Why don't you share your story a little bit? Kind of give us some background about who you are and maybe what you did before this and what got you into this field.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate the introduction. Very kind. Yeah. So as far as my story, I feel very lucky that I think a lot of times when people come in and see me, a lot of the work is, what's my purpose? What am I doing? Right? Who am I? What am I doing? And my a statement that always resonates for me that I think about often is this idea of helping others actualize their potential. That's really what it's all about for me. I want to see people, because we can all do that with one another. We can see each other's potential, and oftentimes it's the person who doesn't see their own potential. And so awakening them to that and helping them, journeying along with them, is essentially what all my work is. And even before being a therapist. So to kind of give a quick rundown, before being a therapist, I used to work in the music industry, which was, amazing. It was a ton of fun.
You look
and
like
it was
somebody
really
who used to work
interesting
in the music industry.
I know, right? I know. Who else wears a suit and a t-shirt together, right? It's wrong.
That's right. You look like a lead
No, but
guitarist
yeah,
more than a therapist. That's awesome,
yes.
though.
I may have been on a couple worship bands back in the day. Yeah. Yeah. So I worked in the music industry for several years, used to write songs and produce records for a living. I was very fortunate, very, very blessed in that. But I found that I loved helping artists actualize their potential, right? Figuring out, well, what's the next song? What's the next sound? Who am I now? And what is my audience needing me to be? Which was always an interesting space to be in, a very vulnerable space. And I loved that. But I was like, man, what'd be great? I love this hour or two before we actually start doing the work of putting together a song. Why don't I just do that?
Yeah.
Right. And so at a certain point, it made sense to make that transition. So I used to go between Nashville and Los Angeles for a few years, and then I have a lot of family out here in Los Angeles, and that's where I'm based. And so I got a place out here in LA, and started doing this therapy thing. And a big part of it, oddly enough, we're in such an interesting time, right, where everything's online. That's actually how you and I met initially. We have one of those friendships that has been fostered over COVID, which is interesting and rare, and just it's been awesome. But the route that I decided to go for my graduate education was to do it all online for that reason. I believe that virtual is going to play a huge part in the therapy. I mean, imagine a situation where underprivileged schools are going to have access to having virtual therapists. That's going to blow open the possibility for people who are really struggling and don't have the privilege of having mental health services. And so I decided consciously that I was going to get my education that way and really see if this was possible. And it was an amazing experience, getting my education online and then actually starting in different sites thereafter. So I'm very thankful for that, and I think it's really done me a service, and the clients I work with, having some familiarity with how do you deal with Zoom, how do you deal with this, how do you it's important. And the studies show that they're finding that therapy is just as effective online, which is incredible as in person, which in some ways is kind of hard to believe, but I'm grateful that that's what it's showing. So in terms of what I'm doing now, right, a lot of my work, as you said, is with youth and young adults. I currently work in a private practice, but before that I worked as a school counselor for quite a bit of time. So all those coming of age teenage movies and TV shows, that's pretty much what it's like. It's like you're living in it.
Yeah.
And it was great. And yeah, it's been amazing work. And I think if we can catch people, when they're a teen or when they're a young adult, and process through, what they're going through then, and helping them to have that self-awareness and mindfulness, then
Yeah.
sky's the limit as they
Yeah.
grow. There's less correction that's having to happen,
Yeah.
and so that's my story in a nutshell. That's
Yeah.
the short story long, or long story short. I'm not sure
Right.
which.
No, that's great. And
Yeah.
what's the name of the place that you're working at right now? You're with the group?
Yeah. So I work at Levy Counseling Center. It's based in Pasadena. They also have some offices in Santa Monica, but I've been doing pretty much everything virtually at this point,
Yeah, I know.
which has been amazing. So,
Yeah.
I've been able to connect with people in San Francisco, San Diego, just everywhere.
Yeah.
It's been a really interesting time to be a therapist or a coach.
Yeah.
It's
It's
just an
it's
interesting
been
time.
interesting for me too, just in that
Yeah.
I what I found even more interesting, or interesting for me anyway, is that I have clients here in San Diego that I offer to meet with in person that would prefer to meet online.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because I'm such
Yes.
I'm a, hey, let's connect. And because I was a pastor for so many years, like
Yeah.
I know I can't hug everybody, but if I could, I'd literally hug everybody. But I
Right.
find that there's people that are just like, honestly, it's been a lot of people who need that sort of anonymity and that sort of like safe. I'm at my home. I'm not, I,
Yeah.
I'm in a safe place. So I feel a little bit already, I'm used to a screen now. I'm used to doing things online, and I can kind of let down my guard a little bit.
Yeah. It's definitely it's been a switch, right? It's such a transition, and I do think what has been a really something that I've seen is that I think people are willing to be more vulnerable when there's a screen between people.
Mm-hmm.
So oddly enough, I think you can actually get to some deeper work sometimes.
Yeah.
Which is hard to believe. Like I would never think that, but
Yeah. It wouldn't be
it's
my
good to
first thought
see that
either.
that's the case.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well,
Crazy time.
let's jump in. I just to set things up a little
Let's
bit.
do it.
I recently
Yeah.
challenged kind of people, my sphere or network, and the people I reach out to, social media and all that kind of. I really talked about getting and asking for help before it's too late. Now I realize like it's never too late, but like you talked about those corrective things. There's a lot of damage that could be avoided, right? If we became comfortable with this idea of reaching out for help before it was too late or before too much damage was done. And
Yeah.
Christian actually became one of those people for me. I think you reached out to me on LinkedIn, and then we connected on Zoom.
Yeah.
Got to know each other and all these kinds of things. And then as things were sort of getting bumpy and my family and I started noticing my teens needed some help and I needed some help. Christian was one of the first people that I reached out to because even those of us who are in helping professions, pastors, counselors, coaches, whatever, man, we ourselves need self-care. We ourselves need help. And so we have to go outside of ourselves to get that help sometimes. So Christian, you became that for me. So I thank you for that.
I'm blessed to be that. I'm happy to be of service in any way I can.
Yeah.
It's been a blessing getting to know you and your family. It really has.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And so with that in mind, I wanted to have a conversation about kind of the state of the union, where our kids are at, where our teens are at. Because I know you you were a youth pastor or something at some point too, or you were in youth ministry.
I did. I was a youth pastor back in the day. Yep. I was in youth ministry for several years.
So, and even probably a lot is, there's certain truths about teenagers and young adults that are sort of always there, right? Like that sort of, who am I, what's, detaching from their parents, figuring out who they are, what's next. But then there's a lot that's probably changed even from when I'm old now, but even when you were a young, you were a teenager to even when you were doing youth ministry to where they are today, like a lot is changing so rapidly. So kind of, I think one of the things I want to ask is just, what would you say are some of the challenges that teenagers that you're finding that teenagers and young adults are facing in our current day and age,
Yeah.
pandemic, I mean, all
Yeah.
sorts of things. What are you finding, and what do you think the greatest challenges are right now for them?
Yeah. I mean, so I think this is where most therapists would say something along the lines of, depression or anxiety, but what I believe to be a layer deeper than that is connection. I think
Mm,
people are struggling with, there's what I see as internal and external connection, right? And so knowing who I am and being connected to that and being okay with that guy, and
yeah.
then being connected to, the people around me, my sphere of influence. Do I feel connected to them?
Mm,
And especially with teens and young adults, I think this time has really challenged that in a lot of ways. It's
yeah.
challenged what does it look like for us to be connected? I think it's challenged people to take more of a reflective stance and a pause to assess what that is. And I think that's especially important for teens and young adults, and really for parents of, figuring out how to connect with them. Because you're right, the dynamic is changing. The way that you used to parent your kid when they were a kid versus a teenager is completely different.
Well,
Completely different.
I don't know what
And
the
and
hell
and I
I'm doing.
think if we can, right, right. And I think, and you know what? I think most parents don't. And I found that, it's kind of like when you go into fatherhood or motherhood for the first time. You can read all the books, you can listen to all the podcasts, you can watch all the videos,
Yeah,
but then there's something about it being real for you
yeah.
that changes everything. And you know it, and you have to throw the rest out the window and become aware of, what does my child need? How do
Mm,
I be a father? How do I be a mother in this situation? I think the same is with teens, and especially with that age bracket, is getting to know your kid, like listening. What are they spending their time doing,
yeah,
and why? What are they seeking to do?
yeah.
It's been interesting right now, right? I find that a lot of parents contact me of the teen clients that I have, like, my kids are playing video games all the time. I'm like, do you realize now that video games, they're actually socializing, they're able to like chat with their kids while they're, their friends while they're playing. So
Yeah.
that's them trying to connect. That's
Mhm.
them trying to have that external connection and maintain some sort of normalcy.
Yeah.
You don't want to completely throw that away.
Yeah.
We do
No.
want to monitor it, but how do we still allow them to connect? And
Yeah.
so this is a trying time for sure, but I think there
Yeah.
will be some families and kids and young adults that will come out of it
Oh,
way stronger, if they can look into that
yeah. I
and
like
be
that.
aware of
I
it.
like that hope you're leaving us with there. Well, I feel like the
Mhm.
connection thing is so huge. When I was young, uh, you were either playing video games by yourself alone at home, or you had to invite all your
Right,
buddies over,
right.
right? And so like we don't live in that world
Yeah.
anymore, really. I mean, but
No.
like recently, I hadn't even shared this with my audience or whatever, but all three of my kids
Yeah,
got
yeah.
COVID, and
Yes.
and they got him,
Heard about this.
and they kind of and they got it like in staggers. So we were like almost a month on quarantine, and I'm telling you, like
Ugh,
that, like
yeah.
them having FaceTime, them having video games was the only form of connection. But I noticed dramatic drops in their well-being, like the more
Yeah.
they felt stuck
Big time.
inside. I mean, the more they felt
Mhm.
even at home. Man, it was really, really hard. So I mean, I hear that connection piece.
Yeah.
It's how do we encourage
Huge.
that? How
And
do
this
we
is,
help them with that?
well, I think that's it, right? Is like knowing your kid and knowing your family. So, like, for example, I think you're like a prime example of this, right? Because you guys are an outdoorsy family. You guys play basketball, you do sports.
Yeah.
And so sitting inside all day
Oh
is
my
like
gosh.
the worst, right? It's the
Yeah.
worst. You guys need to be out biking, you need to be out playing basketball. You got to be out doing. That's how you guys connect.
Hmm.
Not only how you connect with your kids, but how your kids connect with other kids, how your
Oh
kids
yeah.
connect with themselves,
Really
like
hard.
all of
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
right? And so with that being the case, I think this is where, as parents, we have to really, in some ways, play the role of therapist. What is going on with my kid, and being curious? And I think sometimes what I've seen, right, is parents get so spooked. They're seeing their child declining, right? They're getting
Hmm.
freaked out how my kid's, more isolated and what's going on. And I would urge parents to start looking at the why, like what's beneath that, instead of freaking out and saying, hey, get out, you need to get out of your room, you need to stop playing video games, taking that authoritative stance.
Right.
Collaborate with them. They do secretly, believe it or not, they want to have relationship with you, right? And so figuring out how to help them connect is part of it.
Yeah.
How they connect with themselves, how they connect with those around, externally, and so, like, for example, if you have an active kid and they're inside playing video games all day, it's, hey, let's play some basketball. Let's go for let's do something, and yeah, you might get some pushback, but you have to understand that, the COVID, it's been what, 8-9 months of this at this point. There's a conditioning that's come with it. And it's not just you're stuck at home, it's mentally too. People have kind of shut down and they forget what they can do, right? What other options there are, and they forget to be creative. And I think that's where parents can step in. Collaborating with their kids, being creative.
Yeah, that's so good. I like that a lot. What would you say, gosh, I almost want you to speak to both audiences, like to teenagers and young adults and or to parents, but what would you say are some signs or signals that you might be struggling? Like for a teenager or a young adult, like what are some signs that things might be a little bit worse or a little bit, more problematic than you might think? Or, what are some of the signs and signals for both young adults and
oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I think it really is. So it's tricky, right? Because we're kind of asking for like a catch-all in a way, right? Like how do we become aware of it? I think the big piece there is noticing what has changed in you or in your kid, right? So if your kid has typically been a happy kid and they're not, that might be something to look into, right? If your kid typically is outdoors and they're not, it's different for every kid, right? And it's different for every young adult. But I think something that they can do, right, is encouraging that awareness and asking good questions. And not like hey, I'm coming into your room and checking on you, what are you doing? But more like, how are you feeling? And I found that the best way to do this for parents is to be in an activity when you do it. No one wants to be just approached like, hey, you seem off. What's wrong with you? They don't want that.
Yeah.
They want to be connecting with you. And, when you guys are bonding, you're playing basketball or whatever, be like, hey, I've noticed, I've really, and starting from the frame of yourself, I've noticed, man, COVID has really made it difficult for me to really do anything. I find that I don't even oftentimes want to go outside, or I find like I just end up sitting around watching TV and not actually feeling all that good. And then letting the kid, I kind of feel that way too. I notice, creating a conversation. Oftentimes the way we do that is starting with us and our experience. Because when they see that mom and dad can go there, then they oftentimes are more willing to go there as well. We have to set the frame.
That's so
for
good.
them.
Yeah, I think we as parents, I'll speak as a parent for a second. I think we sometimes fear being that vulnerable or transparent with our kid. But I have found, just for me, that like it's and you might tell me, hey, this isn't healthy, but and I'm fine with that. But as
we'll see.
I'm kind of, if I could be like you talked about noticing, and I think that's so important, because when you notice your child acting or behaving in a way that isn't sort of normal for them, for any of us, even adults, that's like a sign of moving toward depression, when we're not able to do the things that we normally find joy in and like and enjoy. So when, for me to be able to share that with my kid and go, man, I'm like what you said, I do that. I'll say, man, I really feel just kind of blah today. I feel like, man, would you guys want to go like on a walk? Would you guys want to? And there's always that pushback, but I find, now that I've sort of practiced that over time now, and my kids, you've met my kids, so like they're pretty verbal. So like my oldest, for instance, will just go, Dad, you seem kind of off today. Maybe you should go on a walk. but there's a freedom now that I'm like, yeah, you know what, buddy? And they're like, that's really good. Like, hey, what do you need? What do you need to feel better?
Yeah.
So
Yes, absolutely. Well, here's I love that. By the way, I love that. And I think the big piece there is they're learning from you. You're modeling transparency. You're being authentically you.
mhm,
And that's going to help when they look to connect with the external. When they're looking to connect with other people, they aren't going to feel as much like, okay, I need to present as if I have it all together.
mm,
Right. They're going to be able to be honest with where they're at, and that and meet other people in that space. I think when you look, especially when you go back, in time to different, moments in time, like the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and you look at the kids that came out of that, oftentimes they have very little connection with their parents in terms of like in an emotional sense,
right, right.
and so they have to connect in terms of work, or they have to connect in terms of something else, or how they
Right.
built their family. And there's a lot of
Mhm.
keeping up with the Joneses in terms of family dynamic. But when you're able to be honest, they're able to realize, oh, okay, so I can be honest too.
Yeah,
And so there's a lot of freedom in that, and I
yeah,
think that's incredibly important.
yeah,
So I love that.
yeah,
I'm a huge fan of that.
yeah.
Huge fan of that.
That's
And of course that can be taken too far,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
we
You
got
don't
to put
want
it
to
out
share
there.
too
But
much. Yeah, and I think that
sure.
our kids, and even if you're, if you're in your late 40s and 50s and you have old kids, meaning you have a 22-year-old at home, or it obviously looks different as they get older,
Of
but
course.
still, like, I like that idea of sort of being really aware, practicing awareness in terms of connection. Like,
Yeah.
um, like,
Yes.
do you see them engaging with their friends in any way? Do you find them engaging with you and the family? And being able to have
Yeah.
those conversations, especially as they get older, I think is super important. Because I think, like you described this, the older
Absolutely.
generations, like my parents and even older, I think there's always been this sort of, I'm sure it'll happen to me as well, but like there's always been this sort of like,
Sure.
we're the parents and grandparents, you come to us if you want, like
Yes.
it's not our responsibility to go to you and to meet you where you're at. It's your
Yes.
responsibility to come to us if you need something, if you want to connect and hang out. Otherwise, I'll wait for your call. And I think that's important for parents to remember, is to not be overbearing and like demanding of connection, but to
Hmm.
be available and be intentional about it.
Yeah, because you are co-creating your relationship with your kid. You are. It is a collaborative effort. And so if the frame is you come to me when you want to, do they even know how to ask for help?
Yeah.
Like
Adults
it
don't even
brings
know
up
how to
these
ask for
series of other
help.
things that exactly. So you're gonna put it on a teenager to figure cheese,
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
I think you're absolutely right with that one. And let's even notice this. I'm curious, and again, I'm asking you this. I have no idea what the answer could be. This could totally fall flat, but I'm curious, since you've been open and honest about your experience of things, do you find that your kids will just randomly come up to you and be open and honest about their experience? Will they bring up things? Are they more vulnerable with you?
Yeah,
What is that
well,
like?
again, like you had kind of mentioned that each kid is very different. Like
Of course.
my oldest, who is a boy, is completely like
Yeah.
that. It's like it works like a charm with
Yeah.
him. Like there's a give and take, and
Right. Right.
I would think that
Yeah.
most parents, their teenage boy is probably not like that at all. Very different. My
Yeah.
youngest, who's a boy,
Very different.
who is like is I it's like I have to pull it out of him. I have to, like, there's a lot that has to go into pulling it out of him. But once it gets out, it goes.
Hmm.
And then there's my daughter in the middle, who's very
Right.
different, who's a teen, and
Yeah.
she's ready to engage, but very cautious about what she shares on a deep level with anybody.
Right.
So I
Yes.
think, yes,
Yes.
I think I have felt that that's true. At least they know, I think my kids know that
Yeah.
there's an open door there that's available. Like, at least they know that, like, I'm not going to push it,
And
but
that's the important thing.
yeah, is that
Yeah.
the opportunity is there. And I can't force the timing or force the transaction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I love that. And I think that's such a great piece of this is you don't want to, you want to create the space. You
Mm,
don't want to force, an experience,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? So I think that's great. That's good. Yeah. And I like how even with your three, right, they're so different. And
Hmm.
so what works with one doesn't necessarily work with the other,
Yeah.
you know, it's,
Yeah.
but they all know that a door is open.
Yeah.
And that's a huge piece,
Yeah.
huge piece.
Yeah. Very, very challenging. But so
Yeah.
maybe just as we kind of come to somewhat of a conclusion on this, but what do you feel like
Yeah.
parents, what advice or what direction would you give us parents? Like what do us parents need to know about their teenager and young adult? Like what do we really need to know about them and where they're at right now, particularly in this climate that we're in right now, this culture and day and age?
Yeah. Yeah, this is gonna sound like such basic advice, and I think it could be easily
Probably
written
why it's
off
good.
because of that, right? And so I'll sort of I'll say it in this overarching, and then I'll get into some of the like specific how specifically you can go about it. I think you need to know your kid. I think that's the biggest piece, knowing your kid. So that's like the umbrella. Now, what that looks like, I think you should know who your kids' friends are. I think you should have some sense of how your kid operates in social situations and how they connect externally. I think you should also have a sense of how they connect internally, right? Like what gets them going? What do they get excited about? What could they just do for hours on end? What do they hate doing? Where do they
Right.
struggle? It's that. I really think something that parents could be better at, and I think this goes across the board, is understanding social media. I think that is a huge piece of
Mm,
this. Is under having an understanding of how that works because that is the television for your kid.
yeah.
That's where a lot of them are getting their information and their ideas, and so you should have some sense of what is TikTok. you
Yeah.
know, you should
Yeah.
know what that is, right?
Yeah.
You should know if your kid is engaged in that, and
Yeah.
and they may not be, but if they are, you should have some sense of okay, what are they watching on there? What sorts of things are, what is their world like?
Hmm.
Because inevitably that's what's shaping them, and we want to be mindful of that because that'll inform how we approach them and how we create that space for them.
Yeah. That's so important. And I
Yeah.
think maybe you could speak to this for a moment too, because I just it
Yeah.
popped in my mind, but especially
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
Christian parents, parents of kids in the
Mhm.
church and those kind of things, there's such a
Yeah.
and rightfully so. There's a fear around social media. There's a fear around some of these vehicles of connection, but they really
Yeah.
are that. They're and obviously any form of connection can be abused in some kind of way. Like there it could be misunderstood or misappropriated.
Absolutely.
But there is also this tension that they live in where me as a 40-year-old parent goes, you don't need that,
Yeah.
you don't need to be on this or that or that,
Yeah.
and there's some truth in that. But when you're talking about figure out how they connect, when all of their other friends, it's not giving
Yeah.
permission, but when all their other friends are connecting via social media, um, and we're
Yeah.
saying absolutely without a doubt it's a line you cannot cross, you cannot be on that, like there creates a tension there that's not that's not allowing for them to
Yeah.
engage. So how do you balance that? Because it
Yeah.
seems like there's some real dangers in it, and then there's
Yeah.
some real missed opportunities if we just are completely like absolutely not, when that's where the
Yeah.
world is right now.
Right. Right. And it's tricky, even as you present that to me, I think sometimes people think of therapists as being these like wizards who have all the answers, right? and,
You
and same with
don't, come
pastors
on.
and coaches. i
Right, right.
don't i don't have all the answers, believe it or not, right? And it would be wrong. I think a dangerous thing is for someone is to listen to somebody that feels that they do have all the answers. I think this is a dynamic process. I don't
Yeah,
think that
great.
it's as cut and dry as people would like it to be,
Mm,
and so I do think you have to be mindful of how does my team connect, and also what does connection look like for them, and what sorts of things are they connecting to, and that's part of really knowing your kid.
yeah.
Oftentimes what I find with parents is they hold on to this image of their kid from the past. With teens
Mm,
it's my kid used to be this, my kid used to be that. It's like, but who are they now? Like,
right.
who are they in the last 3 months?
Mm,
Tell me
that's
about
so
your kid in
good.
the last 3 months. You know,
So good.
like that needs to be constantly audited, and it really is a real relationship. You
Yeah.
know what's going on with your friends. You know what's going on with your spouse. You know what's going on, with your parents, your extended family. You should know what's going on with your kid.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
and
so good.
and we don't want to be overbearing. We don't want to be overbearing, but yeah, I think you're right. I think there's social media is a tough one. I
Yeah.
don't think that there's a clear answer on that. And I do think there is value to those who stay away from it, but I also think it can be difficult for kids who are, especially now, where that's where people, connect.
Yeah.
Imagine your kid, imagine your kid not having a cell phone during COVID.
Yeah.
It would be terrible, right? No way of connecting with people. That would be
Yeah.
awful for their mental health. And so
Yeah.
that's what I want parents to be thinking about, right? I
Yeah.
don't, as a therapist, when I sit with clients, I'm not, I don't have this formula of what is healthy or unhealthy, and in some ways I do, but in other ways,
Right.
like it really depends on the person. And
Yeah.
so it depends on the kid. It
Hmm.
depends on what they're going through, what they're thinking about, who their friends are.
Yeah. Well,
You
and
know
it
your
goes back
kid.
to something that
So it
it
comes
goes
back
back to
to,
what you were saying. Yeah. About knowing your
yeah.
kid, like, and having a conversation with them
Yeah.
about like this. It could look like, well, oh, you want
Yeah.
Instagram or TikTok? Well, hey, tell me about it. Tell me why. Help me
Yeah.
understand what it's all about, and letting them
Mhm.
convince you, or at least, give their understanding of what it is, why they would use it, how they would use it. And then, as
Yeah.
opposed to, and then go, well, let's have a conversation about that. Well, let's have a conversation with mom, or let's have a conversation with all of
Mhm.
us together. And
Love that.
let's just kind of talk about you know, why that's important to you right now, and what would it mean for you to have that, and what would it mean
Mhm.
for you not to have it. Um, let's have that conversation, as opposed to what
Yeah.
parents want to, kind of just fall back on that because I said so, and because I know best, and whereas there are so many of us that are
Those
like,
that's not
no
though you
idea.
aren't building a relationship when you say that,
Yeah.
you know? Like that shuts things down. And
Yeah.
what that tells me is that as a parent, you don't feel like you have a good sense of what's going on, and so you're just trying to cut it,
Yeah.
right? There's not actually relationships there. It's
Hmm.
I'm uncomfortable, and so I'm going to stop this now and assert, control.
Yeah.
And as
Not helpful.
anyone who has a teenager knows, they oftentimes push around it.
Right.
It's
Right.
not helpful.
We all
It's
did.
not helpful.
I did.
Yeah.
um yeah. And
Right. Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
how about any advice you would give to to teenagers, young adults, like anything when if you meet with a
Yeah.
teenager, young adult, what do you anything that you tell them,
Yeah.
like, hey, you need to know this about your parent, or there's, you know, don't forget that,
Yeah.
fill in the blank, like, about their parents, like, what do you help how do you help them
Yeah.
sort of understand the perspective of their parents?
Good question. I love that question. So here's what I think I've found to be the most helpful way of me going about it. I have to get to know that kid first. I
Mm,
have to know what they're excited about, what they hate, what's going on at home. I need to know what the
mm,
relationship is like with their siblings, their best friend, that person that bullies them at school. Like I need to know all of it. I need to get to know them before I start speaking into their life.
yeah.
That's incredibly important because that rapport is so key. Because then we have a relationship. It's not me talking down to you, it's me collaborating with you. It's me coming alongside and journeying with you. That's
Yeah.
the kind of relationship I want with teens because this
Hmm.
helps them actualize their potential. I play a
Hmm.
role, I'm supporting them, but I can't do it for them. And so I want them to gain that self-esteem as they start to grow, as they start to push through the hard things, as they start to sort through the mess of the internal and the external of their life.
Yeah.
And so getting to know them, right, is key first. And then, oftentimes the question becomes, you know, what, okay, so this happened with your mom said this or your dad said that, you know, what was that like for you? Leaving a really open question. What was that
Mm,
like for you to have them say this, to say that, to do this, to do that? And then what do you think they were trying to do?
Mm,
Well, I think they were trying to connect with me, but it was just really awkward. Or, well, I think they have my best interest in mind, but it's just, I just hate how she does that. And,
yeah.
and so, for in terms of tactics for parents, when you have a discussion with them, I'd encourage you to get their feedback at the end of it. How did this feel for you to talk about that? Like, what was this like? Like, did you feel heard? Did you feel listened to? Do you feel like I just kind of like shot all your ideas down?
Mm,
And I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not saying change it based on what they say.
right, right.
I'm just saying being open to that feedback builds the relationship even in difficult conversations.
Yeah,
Even when it's just going to be a no.
yeah,
That's not happening. We are not doing that, you
yeah.
know. But
No,
caring about
so
what their
good.
experience is like will help them value their experience, and that will help with self-esteem as they grow.
Yeah,
You
no,
know.
that's so good. I like that because it just, in my mind, I have that picture of, I want a relationship with my kids after they leave the house. And if
Absolutely.
I don't know how to build that based upon, like, as they get older. I had a mentor one
Hmm.
time say to me that, parenting is a temporary job if you do it right. Like,
Mm,
you don't
yeah.
parent forever. Like, like, they become
Yeah.
adults, right? And as they become
Yeah.
adults, you need to have an adult relationship. Yes, you're still parent to them, and you're still, be
Yeah.
there for them in only ways that mom or dad could. But honestly, you want to have a relationship with them beyond, you know,
Hmm.
these, formative
Absolutely.
years. You want to have a relationship that feels like an adult relationship. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's a marathon, and every decision you make matters.
mm,
It affects how you show up at the end,
yeah,
and what kind of race you'll run with them, you know.
right,
And so I love that frame of, remembering that I want to have a relationship with them when they're adults and help usher them into adulthood. And how
yeah,
can I do that most effectively in this moment?
yeah. Mm,
You know. So
so
that's
good.
great. I love that. I
Oh,
love that.
Christian, thank you so
Yeah.
much for this
Yeah,
time, and
man.
I really, really
Hey,
appreciate it. How
hey, blessed,
how,
blessed
how
to do it.
can
Yeah.
um how can people connect with you or connect with resources that might be helpful if they're going,
Yeah,
okay, what do I do now? What, okay, now what? I need help.
absolutely.
What would you suggest?
Yes, yes. So yeah, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'll send you the link. You can put it wherever you need to, or
Okay.
I can email it to, if they want to reach out to me at, they can reach me via email at Holmes, HOLMES .lavie, LAVIE at gmail.com. And what I'll do is I put together basically a deck that it's interactive. It has audio and everything connected to it of how to better connect with your team. I
Oh,
think that's
great.
going to help your audience in a huge way. It's a presentation I usually do, when we're actually in person, and
Hmm. Yeah.
but I think this is, I had to make a virtual version of this because so many people need help and they need it right now.
Yeah.
They need it right now, and
So
so
good.
I'll provide that. I'll send you the link, and that can be shared with whomever is interested, or you can email me at Holmes, HOLMES .lavie, LAVIE at gmail.com, and I'd be just say, hey, I'm looking for, the PowerPoint on, connecting with my team. I'll send it right over to you.
That's
I
so
think
good.
that's a good place to start,
Yeah,
and they can
absolutely.
always reach out to me if you're looking for, me to connect with your kid, or your teen, or you as parents, right? It's,
Yep.
a lot of people, I think everyone can use support, therapists included. We can all use
Yeah.
support. It's important.
Amen to that. Well,
Yeah.
and I think that's good
Yeah.
reminder too, that parents, I'll just speak to the parents really quick because I know that's mostly my
Yeah.
crowd,
Yeah.
but reach
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have this, like, we get freaked out because our kid is like acting very normal. They're acting like a teenager or a young adult, but for us, we're freaking out. And so we
Yeah.
think we need to get them some counseling. And I can't tell you how many
Yeah.
times over the 20 plus years of being a pastor that I had parents call me and go, I need you to call my teenager. And I'm like, how about you come in and you and I talk for a moment, because that might be the best help
Yeah.
that your teenager can get. So please don't hesitate to reach
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely don't want therapy to be a punishment. Yeah, we
out.
we
Right.
and I think everyone can benefit from it.
Yeah.
You're right, and I think parenting too. It's tough being a parent.
Yeah.
It's tough, and so
Yeah.
having someone there who has an understanding of it is so key. You
Mm,
do, I do. It's
yeah.
a valuable thing. It's a valuable asset,
Yeah.
especially at a time like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Christian. I really appreciate your time and hanging out
Of
with us.
course, man.
I love,
I appreciate you having me.
yeah, it's been
Yeah.
great. Love introducing you to my crowd. So thank you again.